Hi, and welcome to In Real Life, another episode. And I've got Dave Carter with me today. I'm Pete Carter, if you didn't know, and both of us are doctors. And if you want to know, we are related, so father and son. And so it's nice to have David with me. I call him Dave. Everybody else, I call him Dave. Most people call him Dave, but that's all right. So
that's right. I answer to both those names amongst a range of other titles as well. So
yeah, doctor and all sorts of other things. Yeah. Preacher, teacher, and all that sort of stuff. So, anyway, it's our delight to be with you today. We're recording this just as we're at the beginning stages of lockdown 2.0. I think we're calling it, David, aren't we?
Yeah, it needed a good title. I think they probably needed to try and jazz it up a little bit. Yeah, I think that's as good a title as any.
So that's our reality here in England. If you're in other parts of the UK, you might have different realities, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. And if you're looking from overseas, we're not quite sure what your reality is. Everything is changing quite rapidly in the world at the moment, all around the world, the USA as well. So these are interesting days that we're living in. Both politically and medically and economically. So lots of challenges around. But David, you got some thoughts about that as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked a little bit before, just about the sheer ongoing uncertainty of the entire planet at the moment, and that it feels like you can't make plans, and it feels like you never quite know what's around the corner. As you've said, this week is a time of change. So, England's going back into lockdown. You've got the US presidential election. You've got, massive degrees of uncertainty all round. And I think one of the things that God's really been driving home really is that of having him as our source of ultimate security this year. But he is the rock that we can always depend on. He is steadfast. He is never shaken. And that our source of security really isn't in our current circumstances. And also that our identity is never changed, that we are secure in him. That being said, we then have to kind of adjust the way that we're living in the current circumstances, and you have to process that, and also allow people to deal with some very real hardship. I think that's going on as well. I mean, we're having to adapt. Obviously, we're talking by Zoom today. We saw each other in person at the weekend. We took the chance to have you guys round for lunch because that was the last chance for a month, and now I guess we're seeing each other online for the next few weeks.
I got to play Subbuteo with Sam, and Zoe actually as well. Well, your mum did it, which was fun, but won't be doing that for a few weeks. But Sam loves his Subbuteo at the moment, doesn't he? So that's which is good. That's David's son, if you didn't know.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the thing. So Sam, grassroots level sport, that's cancelled at the moment, and everyone will find something that is frustrating in the current time. There are things that people will really, really miss, and it's easy to come at that with a sense of either some people will feel frustration. Some people feel, I think, a degree of anger, especially when they feel that they don't agree with the measures that the government has put in place. And there's a sense of loss. So I miss being able to see people face to face. I miss being able to take Sam to his football club, and I will miss being able to go to my gym. The gym's closed, and with very real concern as to how that business is going to continue. But I think the message that's being put across, and I think one which we can profoundly agree with, is that actually whatever we do give up, we are doing out of love for other people. And I really think that has to be our motivation. By this stage, everyone is just tired and it's weary. And I think, if we're honest, there's only so far, I think, just a basic sense of civic duty will take you when you're 8 months into this kind of scenario. Even if you work in the public sector, as we, I have, and you had as well, there is a degree of tiredness within the healthcare profession, and compassion always has to be, I think, at the heart of what we do in healthcare. That you do that out of love for the people that you are caring for. Otherwise, it just becomes onerous or just a job. I think you can apply the same thing to lockdown. I think some of the ways that they have tried to put the message across has been with a sense of doing it with a purpose. By doing this, you protect Jeff, who protects Sarah, who protects Jean. Like that, there's that knock-on effect, and that by laying down some of our freedoms, we are doing that out of love for protecting other people, which is interesting because Eastgate, I think, we would argue that one of the things we are best known for is freedom, isn't it, really? Would you say so? Yeah.
Very high value. Yeah, I was interested just even listening to the British politicians this week, because they debated in Parliament on Wednesday, and there's disagreements. I think that's fair to say. There are disagreements, different opinions, which I'm not sure I share all the opinions of the decisions that are made, but actually the ability to respect decisions that you don't necessarily fully agree with is actually also really important, isn't it? And I was quite impressed by, I think it was Stephen Baker or some Baker, who used to be a minister, and he said because he voted against and he was principled against it, but then at the end he said, look, we need everybody now. The most important thing is we all do obey the lockdown rules, because if we don't, we're just going to have to go around this again at some stage. And I thought that was really good. No, he said, I don't agree with this. I'm principled against it. But then his appeal was, we all need to do this together, because actually that's the way we're going to actually, because otherwise it's a bit futile what the lockdown is doing. If you're going to have it, you might as well do it well, for the benefit that will come out of it. So I thought that was good. Actually, I was quite impressed by that as a response. And I'm not cynical about politicians, but they don't always come out with that sort of thought. So that I thought was good. And like you say, one of the things we're talking about really, you and I were chatting, was this sense of corporate responsibility. And in one sense, it's not you lay down your freedom, but you make free choices of what you will do and what sacrifices you make because of love. And that's true of all relationships, isn't it? Like, you're happily married to Joe, but there are things that you actually say, I'd like to do this, but actually we don't do that because actually we want to do things together that would actually mean that would be somewhat exclusive or annoying for one or other of the parties. So you wanted to talk a bit about that, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. If you want to be in any form of meaningful relationship, you limit your freedom, because love trumps your own personal freedom. If those of us that are married know that you limit your ability to just do whatever the heck you like, but you don't begrudge that, or at least hopefully you don't most of the time, because actually what you've gained is so much more. In a similar way with our Christian walk, whatever we have laid down, ultimately is we gain so much more, both in this life and the next. Those of us that are parents know that that limits your freedom significantly. That's Dad, you'll have known that from bringing up me and Kerry.
Certainly do, David. Yeah.
So is Sam. You do that out of love, because actually, what you are kind of doing for the benefit of others, and also for what you are gaining yourself through that relationship. But I think you then apply that, corporately in any kind of community setting. For a community to work and function, individual members have to make choices that might look like their own freedom is restricted, but this is for the good of everything. I don't just drive my car down the paths in New Ash Green. I stick to the road because that's how that has to work for the community. I can't just drive that however I like, however I want, because that you have to have that for that to work. And I think I'd say, fortunately, I think within the UK, especially with the way the NHS is set up, and it being publicly funded, and there is a great deal of public fondness for that there is a genuine sense of public ownership, and I think of responsibility. And I think that's the way we look at this at the moment, that the health of our nation is not just the job of a few specialists or of scattered individual hospitals. that you've got the wonderful sense of unity that is in the NHS, that across the whole country, you're thinking, okay, we're working with common goals. And then I think I see any of the lockdown measures as just the way that the whole country is also investing in that common task as well, that we are limiting our freedom to do certain things out of love, out of a sense of that corporate responsibility that sometimes reduces what you do as an individual, but what you gain to that in just the general functioning of society and the way that your community works is so much more. I mean, it's interesting looking at this biblically. Eastgate we'd centered some of our teaching earlier this year around John 15. I am the vine, you are the branches of Jesus, of remaining rooted in him, and of that sense of resting in him. I think we'd talked previously on a previous In Real Life about working from that place of rest, of staying connected. And we really felt that was one of the key messages for that season. But then the follow-on verses from that, if I just read those, it says, this is John 15, verse 12, 13. It says, my command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. And obviously Jesus is talking about an ultimate sacrifice. He's doing that very literally. He is going to lay down his life for his friends. He's going to lose his life for his friends. And there are Christians still being martyred around the world today who are paying that ultimate price. And I count myself fortunate that particular price is not asked of me in my situation. But I do believe that both for our general friendship and our community, our church community, our friends, we lay down different aspects of our lives at different points for the sake of our friendship and for the benefit of others. And I think at the moment, all of us are being asked to lay down parts of our life, as in parts that we would otherwise do, with the recognition, actually, no, there's no greater love than to sacrifice for people. And I just think that's one of the ways I think that we look at any time that we are giving up something for the sake of someone else. We need to do that out of love, never with a martyr complex. That can get really unhealthy, I think, of just kind of, I'm always the one that gives up. We all know people like that, where they're always talking about, I only ever do things for other people and I never have anything for myself. You can take this to an unhealthy extreme, but ultimately that mindset has, I think, a self-pity element to it that's unhealthy, whereas actually pure love, that brings joy. And actually that's the way that we can bring sacrifice with joy, where we're not just looking at what we've lost, but what we have gained and what we've helped other people to gain as well.
Yeah, I think that sacrifice has to be unconditional, because you can see people make sacrifices and then they go on so much about it that people feel obliged towards them because of those sacrifices. That's manipulative in my estimation. So I think it's a lot of things they'll go unseen, unnoticed, but noticed by God. And I think that's one of the great things. There is during this time, it's been strange being a church leader, because there's a lot of stuff unseen, unknown. We don't know what's going on. But yesterday, actually, David, you were on one of the calls, or two of the calls with me, and sort of thinking, I never knew you were doing that during these last 8 months. You think, wow, and so I think there's a lot of great stuff that's been going on throughout Christianity across the country, and people stepping out. It's interesting. They got Captain Tom's out on the news again, isn't it? This week, so he's got for lockdown 2. He's got another scheme which is for, I think, lonely people or something like that. But we'd have never known Captain Tom if there wasn't the lockdown number 1. You just think there's one of those heroes who's suddenly popped into the public conscience. But they're all over the place. And then another aspect of this, which I've been thinking about, and you prompted my thought with it. Jesus is the vine and we're the branches. And I don't know that much about vines, but what I do know is that every year they're pruned back very severely for next year's crop. And I think one of the things, willingly submitting to Jesus's pruning is quite, and because I've been tested on this at the moment. There's all sorts of things thinking, oh, goodness, not another cut, and so, and I think that there is the Bible talks about that actually, if we're fruitful, that pruning will happen, and it's a good sign. It's actually, if you're not fruitful, actually, that you get chopped down. But the pruning side. But again, I was meditating on this and thinking about it, and we've got quite a big garden, and we are cutting things back. But actually, pruning isn't just a one cut process, particularly on a vine. You can say, I like that branch. That branch had a lot of grapes on it last year, and say yes, but off it comes, and that's been part of my experience with Jesus. This last 8 months is, well, I thought, oh, hold on a minute, that was really good. What's going on? And that's a trust, isn't it? And that's loving God. It says love always trusts, and it will trust when you don't understand. That's a real, I think, a big point of our Christian walk at the moment is, I don't understand a lot, but the choice to trust God is actually a loving. This is one of the ways I love God, is I choose to trust him. It's that command, love God with all your heart. And that means I have to trust him with all my heart as well. And I think that's challenging, but I think it's a bit of my bedrock at the moment, which I keep going back to. Okay, God, I still trust you. I choose to trust you, even though I don't understand. And I think by adopting that attitude, it starts to avoid the cynicism that can creep into us. You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's easy to become jaded, I think, in this season, and I think in the healthcare world as well, you see a lot of I see a lot of clinicians or healthcare workers becoming progressively more cynical as their career goes on, and some of that looks like experience. Sometimes we all need to lose that little bit of naivety from the first step onto the ward or into the surgery or however it is. And there's a helpful stage in that. But you do then see sometimes people getting to the point where they're no longer thinking the best of themselves, their colleagues, their patients. Even and that's a tricky place to get to, and I think it's doing it out of a place that we're continuing to trust in God, staying rooted in him. And I think what you referenced earlier as well, of we don't know what's going on, but God always does. And I think also that's one of the great motivations as well for everything we do in healthcare, that we're doing it out of love for the people that we are kind of helping as well, but we're also doing it as an act of worship, and that God rewards what is done in secret. So, especially I know this. So, as a GP, normally it's just me and one patient in the room. There's no one watching me. It can be a great conversation. It can be a terrible conversation. Only me and the patient know that. And most of the time patients are grateful and express their thanks, and that is good. Thankfulness is actually really, I think, important in the way that we proceed. But after that, ultimately, pre-COVID, they would walk out of the room. Nowadays, I put down the phone or end the video call. We're still seeing some people in the building, but it's more limited. And ultimately, after that, no one knows what I've done. My colleagues, we're generally aware, and we do discuss what we're doing in our cases, but typically it was just me, the patient. But actually, no, there's God there as well, God in that room, who rewards what is done in secret. And there'll be people watching this, and anyone involved in healthcare, that feeling when you have really gone the extra mile, or you've done the overtime, or you've just worked your socks off, or it's been the most horrendous shifts and you've really gone at it, and then nothing, no one knows, no one says, and you just go home like, Dad, you'll have known that feeling. And what we can't do, you can get where you become jaded, is if you allow that to become a negative and a disappointment. But actually what happens is knowing each time, actually God knows that. God recognizes that time when I've been late on the ward. God knows when I tended that patient who has, say dementia or cognitive impairment, who's unable to voice their own thanks, and no one else saw. Literally, no one is going to thank you, but God does, and Jesus does, and He values that. That's where I think that really does come in, helps our motivation in this season.
Yeah, and I think when you're working in healthcare, if you just reflect upon the opportunity you have to enrich, and that's one of the words I like, people's lives every day, in quite extraordinary ways. And I used to reflect upon this because, again, like you say, I know I've been through it many years of working in general practice, and the days when I used to see 40, maybe between 40 and 50 people a day. And when I actually thought about it, I would say the vast majority of those people thanked me. The vast majority. And I thought, you know what, I probably get more thanks in a day than most other people who work.
Yeah.
I just thought, you might think, well, 10-minute appointments, every 10 minutes, I'm probably getting somebody expressing gratitude. Thank you, doctor. That's really, and the opportunity to help. And I just thought, what a privilege that is. And if you actually capture it that way, because it's the ones who don't say thank you, or the niggly ones that stay in your mind, is remembering. It's not just being thankful, is it? It's actually being almost thankful for the thankfulness that's coming your way. And so for those of you actually there, on inpatient interactions and healthcare, you will get thanks. Just register it. Register that people are thanking you. I think I found that really helpful when I started it, because I had that point where I think, oh goodness, you get a few years in, but then I had to arrest myself and think, actually, you know what? I have a really good interaction with many people every day that actually helps them in their life, and I count that a real privilege. And I think with that attitude, it helps overcome the tiredness, the weariness. If you just count those blessings of thankfulness, I think that's a really important thing. So, put thankfulness down there. And it's one of the things the Bible tells us, God's will for our life. Often have this. Actually, it was interesting. This week, I was having a conversation with somebody in the medical world about what's God's will for my life. What do you think they want me to do? But which direction do I take with my medical career? And I said, well, I think, I really need God to tell me. I said, no, I think God's going to let you choose, which direction. The key is actually the Bible says this is God's will for your life. Be joyful always, thankful in all circumstances, and pray continually. And that's in Thessalonians. And that's sensible. So joyful always, finding joy, being thankful, and actually pray continually, that continual interaction. And if we do that, those three key ingredients were the bits that I found really helpful in being ongoingly fruitful in life, even, and then I'm having to challenge myself, being thankful for being pruned. that's oh, good. Thank you very much, because that is for fruitfulness in the future. It might look a bit like a slightly odd stump at the moment, but actually the life that is within, if we are in the vine, if we're connected to the vine, we will bear fruit, won't we?
Yeah, and I think that's the power of thankfulness, where it's both being thanked and being thankful, that we know that God is thanking us for that whoever else is saying thank you, God is saying thank you. We ourselves, like you said, we need to be thankful, and if we're not, then again you can get into that martyr complex kind of thing. And I can't remember who it was that said, but it's hard to be arrogant if you're thanking people. It's one of the great keys to humility, is just being able to say thank you. And that's one of the great things that we talk about, those hard clinical days, in that when you're thinking no one said thank you to me, you have to also think the other way and going, how many times have I said thank you to other people? Because no matter how hard the day, unless you have worked in utter isolation, and even then there are systems that have been put in place to help you, there will be people in your day that have helped you. And there are people that are put around you, and people that even just do the things in the background. And the ability to stay thankful is so key to your ability to stay positive in the workplace as well, of going out of your way, of even just wandering down to the nurse's station on the ward, or the physio's office, or the reception in your surgery, and just saying, hey guys, I'm thankful that you're here today, because actually it wouldn't work without them. And it's significant, and it helps them, as we've said, because being thanked is useful, but it grows something in you, and the benefit that you get from that is really significant. And it's interesting, we're talking about thankfulness. I happened to notice the new BNF was on my desk on Monday. I'd been off last week for half term.
British National Formulary, for those who don't understand.
Yeah, it's the drug handbook that we work to typically in general practice. Actually, I took a picture of it. I'll see if I can hold it up. This might not work brilliantly on screen, but
there it is. That's good.
It. That's the BNF, and right at the bottom there's the rainbow, and there's a thank you, and that that boosted me. And I was thinking, I'm like, maybe I have a tendency towards a little bit more cynicism than you, Dad. But I'm thinking, I don't normally need kind of little gestures or notes. I'm normally okay. But I'm thinking, actually, that day, and in the midst of that meant something to me. Like, I know it's just a little note on the drug handbook, but I was thinking, no, that's important. That's significant. That feels like a great step to have taken. And so I appreciated that. And I hope, any of the rest of you that have got your new BNF, I hope you did as well. But I think it's that power of thankfulness that's really significant.
No, that's beautiful. BNF, that was one of my greatest friends in general practice. I was always grateful when the next one came out every 6 months. I love my BNF, I really did. And I missed it actually when I left. It was a funny thing. I missed my BNF. And just one other thought on thankfulness. This is a little tip, and just from me. I made it my practice at the end of every surgery session to go into reception and say thank you for doing a great job, and then I'd let them know without breaking any confidentiality of actually some of the things where they'd help me help people. So I've got quite sometimes that specific thing. When Mr. So and so came in, he was in distress, and this is what we sorted it out for him, and you paid your part in that, and so. I'm not just saying thankful because you did your job as a reception, but actually that they were part of this overall team that actually works together. So I think it's been a really good conversation, and I'm thankful for you, David. And
thank you, Dad. Nice to see you.
I also want to say thank you to Phil Churchill, who's in the background and makes this all work. And you don't see him on screen, but actually Phil does this every week. He sets it up for us. He's a brilliant servant. So thank you, Phil. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Actually, in real life, we've got a great episode next week with a lady called Joy Wright, who's founded a fantastic agency called Emerge Advocacy, and we'll talk about that next week.